welcome to another live stream session with immigrationquestion.com, where we dissect the latest immigration trends and policies with top professionals in the field. We are delighted to have you join us in today's series. Imagine arriving in a foreign country to get away from danger and persecution. You heard about asylum, but the process seems overwhelming. From forms to deadlines and all the legal requirements, one mistake and everything gets ruined. Sadly, that's the reality of thousands of people seeking for asylum every year. This emphasizes the importance of our discussion today. Today's topic, understanding asylum, its procedures, requirements, and your rights, can be the difference between safety and uncertainty. Whether you're seeking asylum, helping someone navigate the process, or want to understand the system better, today's session is just for you. My name is Chanel Ford, and I'll be your host for today. Joining us today is a highly experienced immigration attorney with over 20 years of experience in legal counseling, contract negotiations, and immigration law. He holds 2 Master of Law degrees and has worked across corporate, government, and international sectors. His extensive experience in immigration matters, compliance, and legal strategy makes him a trusted advocate for those navigating complex legal challenges. Welcome with me, Attorney Eric Garro. Welcome to the show, Attorney Eric. We're thrilled to have you with us today.
Thank you for that great introduction. Makes me feel better about myself.
Great.
I want to tell everyone, welcome to the channel, and this is going to be a overview of asylum and the rights and how to navigate this complicated area of the law in the United States. And what I'm going to do is provide general information. This is not legal advice. I want to make sure of that. That is not legal advice, and I'm not going to establish any client and attorney relationship through the channel by speaking and telling you this general information. And with that warning, I'm going to tell you now about asylum. And I understand that many people come to the country and go to the border and they present themselves, say I want asylum. There's 2 ways of obtaining asylum. One is affirmative asylum, and one is defensive asylum. If you are inside the United States already, for however means you got in here, you can apply to asylum if you're not being detained and sent to deportation, or what is called nowadays removal proceedings. When you are in removal proceedings, the way of asylum is called defensive asylum. The process are kind of similar, but it's very, very different when you start submitting yourself to the process. Okay, and for that, I just wanted you to understand, if you happen to have a visa in the United States, you enter the United States, we were allowed to enter the state, you stay here, and you can obtain asylum. That asylum you request to USCIS. That is not an asylum that you go to court and defend yourself. That asylum to go to court and defend yourself when you put into removal proceedings. And the affirmative asylum can become a defensive asylum if for some reason is denied or is being sent to removal proceedings by USCIS or any officer. All right, so that is one distinction that has to be clear from the get-go. So for asylum, you have to meet the definition of refugee to apply for asylum. And refugee is any person who is outside any country of that person's nationality and who is unable or unwilling to return, and is because of he cannot avail or she cannot avail to the protections of that country because there is persecution either by the government or by the persons that the government cannot contain or provide protection to the person. That is the definition of asylum. So if you have to meet that definition in order to apply for asylum. Besides that, there's just five grounds that you can only apply for asylum. You cannot just come to the United States and say, hey, listen, my country, I cannot make money there, or my daughter or child is sick and I want to be in this country, or there's no jobs and there's insecurity. In general terms, you can't just apply for asylum like that. You have to have what is called a ground for persecution. And that ground has to be race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. And this last part, membership in a particular social group, is created by the courts in litigation. So it's what is called in law jurisprudence. So by jurisprudence, there's cases that are important enough that create law. In this creation of law in this particular social group is done by jurisprudence. So, for example, um, a case was provided that women that were battered or were victims of their partners in Guatemala were so outrageous that the United States and this court say, no, we're going to create a special group of these women to protect women because the government in those countries could not protect her. In that country, in Guatemala, could not protect her from domestic partners. So that would create a membership in a particular group, and from that evolve into any female of any country that cannot protect them. So that is how it's going to be uh, determined, and you have to have an attorney or somebody that is savvy of looking at your particular case, and we're going to talk about why a particular case and the relationship with these five types of grounds. Another one is the members of the LGBTQ plus um, that have been accepted in the courts. So if you're uh, uh, part of the LGBTQ community and you've been discriminated against in your country and persecuted in your country directly because of that reason, then you have a ground to seek asylum in the United States. And the other ones, race an- is defined in the courts in a very broad way, and it also is combined with nationality. And here you have to understand that the courts are being very broad in their acceptance of what is an ethnic group or a race or a part of a nationality. So if you belong to a minority in a country that you've been persecuted by the government or by groups that the government cannot contain or that cannot protect you from that, you also are eligible to apply for asylum in the United States. And religion, if you belong to a certain type of religion of creed, it doesn't have to be one of the established religions. It can be a truthful belief in, doesn't have to be metaphysical. It has to be a level of belief that counts as primordial for your life. Is the Supreme Court made a long case once, but as long as it's very well held belief, it will be count as religion. And political opinion is those opinions that are in the form of politics. And here it's important to know that many people um, worked as police officers or as prosecutors or in the military. And sometimes has to be very well analyzed in case by case basis, because the counter argument from the government is that, well, you you knew the risk and you accepted that risk. So because of you accepted that risk, now you cannot come and say, hey, I've been persecuted because I was a you know a person a military or I was in the police. You actually accepted the risk. You assume the risk, and that is the counter argument. But don't be discouraged. There's been cases, so you have to have a very savvy attorney to go into the details to put this into the court. And the other thing that I want to tell you about immigration in general is that unfortunately, in the United States, it's kind of messy, and it's very difficult for a foreigner to understand how messy it is, because the United States and many of other places have always been working as a machine, very efficiently, and has a really good reputation. But when it comes to immigration law, it's a mess. And that is the reality. And also, the judges and the officials has a lot of discretionary power. So it's, it's complicated and it's complex. And even experienced attorneys have really difficult times in certain jurisdictions and with certain judges. The American Association of Immigration Attorneys have statistics about judges in different jurisdictions of how much they approve or disapprove asylum cases. For example, some judges approve 20%, some judges approve 80%, and that's the reality of the immigration law, and that is happening in asylum cases and happening in all types of cases. So this is very important for you guys to know that you have to have a ground. And the um, other aspect of the element of applying for being able to apply for asylum is a reasonable fear. What is a reasonable fear? You are in for asylum is a lower standard. It's a standard of 10%. That your fear is reasonable as a 10% rationality. Okay, it may happen more than 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 not, and is lower than the preponderance of the evidence. It's just like 10%. That is the international acceptance of the bar. However, that is not always applicable in practice by the judges, as I told you, because otherwise most cases should be allowed and granted, but it's not the case. But the well founded fear has two aspects: an objective aspect and a subjective aspect. You have to subjectively be afraid that a group or a person or the government is going to inflict the harm into you. Physically or mental harm is acceptable, but also it has to be a reasonable belief that is objectively that it can happen. You cannot just imagine that it's going to happen to you, but it also objectively has to be well founded. And with that, you can prove it with the circumstances of your case, the circumstances in your country, your situation that happens in your country. And for that, there's many resources, and one of the major resources is the report of human rights that provides the government, the State Department of the United States, also Amnesty International provides certain reports about the situation in every single country. So that is something that the judges will take a look, and they all know. They all know when they come, unless it's um, uh, a very unique country that doesn't have a lot of immigrants into the United States. It may be foreign for the judge, but most judges understand and knows very well the circumstances of most of the countries that the majority of asylum seekers come from. So that's what you have to have as a second element. And the other big part that you have to understand is that if you already presented that you were a victim of persecution in your country, there is a presumption that you will be in the future persecuted. And this is very important because attorneys need to establish that, because then the burden shifts to the government to prove. And here is with the preponderance of the evidence, which is a higher standard, that there's been change of circumstances, that in that country and that situation has changed, and now is safe to be there, and it's safe for you to be there, so they can deny your asylum. Um, so you normally have to um, make sure that you're gonna um, argue both the past persecution and the future persecution. That you are afraid to go back to your country, because if you go back to your country, you're going to suffer some harm. What type of harm? It has to be substantial harm. It has to be. It doesn't have to be just physical. They're going to beat you up. They're going to torture you. They're going to kill you. They're going to rape you, or what have you. But it can be also psychological harm, and that that you're being constantly harassed, for example. And that is when this is the other aspect of asylum. Many people that leave their countries as refugees, they just take off. They don't have time to gather a lot of evidence or information, and it's very difficult to have somebody in the country providing um, those items of evidence. So, what is very important is your declaration. Your declaration, it has a really big, heavy value on evidence. Some of the cases that I have had, it's just with just a good declaration. That's it, because we couldn't get not even the certificate of birth, because the government was not giving it to you. You can't. So, and we proven that we try and we couldn't get not even that. So proving anything else was very difficult. But if you have a very solid, good declaration as an applicant, that can win a case, just that alone. But of course, you don't want that only to be the only evidence. You can provide as much evidence to corroborate your argument, and that it will come with affidavits from other people, declarations, reports from psychologists, reports from the hospital if you've been harmed, and police reports if you try to make a police report, etc., etc. All that will be um, evidence that can be taken into consideration by the judges in your case. Um, Persecution is very broad as well, but it's being defined by cases, and most of it is just a credible threat that to inflict grave harm, threats of death, imprisonment, or infliction of substantial harm or suffering. Um, Also, harassment generally doesn't rise to the level of persecution or poverty. The harassment in just civil harassment, but there's all types of harassment that will be like sexual harassment or harassment of other type that have that level. So you, I tell people, if you're gonna uh, seek asylum, just try to obtain an attorney. If not, there is associations like ILA, the Association of Immigrant Attorneys, that may provide you will help. There's several other associations that can help you at least um, frame your asylum case with enough substance that it's gonna have a chance to um, to succeed. And honestly, right now, the with this new administration, the asylum officers and the judges are gonna have direction from the government that are gonna put it more difficult for people, every immigrant seeking a benefit from the United States. It's gonna be um, um, high standards, and it's gonna be more difficult for everybody to obtain the benefits that the U.S. was giving to immigrants. So the entities that, as I said before, that has to persecute you has to be mostly the government, but it could be non-governmental organizations or guerrilla levels, paramilitary groups, or gangs. However, this is a very big caveat that I want everybody to understand really careful, because many of my asylum cases come from Latin America when people have been harassed and threatened, and some of them harmed, and some of them beaten, some of them tortured by gang members.
Right.
But you have to, and this is my next portion of the explanation, is that you have to get the nexus of that harassment to you based on the five grounds that I talked before. Okay, you cannot be a victim of just general violence or just general crime. You cannot. That is not a ground for seeking asylum. If you are just a victim of a violence because you happen to be in a neighborhood where there's gangs and you were victim of a gang, that doesn't rise to the level of the protections that the law in the United States would provide to you. However, a savvy attorney will look at that and make it happen and have this connection, which is the next part of those grounds, those five grounds that we talked about, including belonging to a particular group, um, because this is, and I've been successful with that argument in most of my cases so far, uh, is that you're being targeted by the gang's member, which the government is unwilling or unable to control. And that's what is happening. They're unwilling or unable, and sometimes they're part of the gang members, that the organization. So you've been targeted uh, because of who you are. You are a decent human being. You are a person that wants to follow the rules, follow the law. You believe in some deity. You believe in goodness. You believe in humanity. You believe in human rights, and you disbelieve on harming people, and you don't believe or being a criminal or being part of a criminal organization. Well, those are religious beliefs. Those are political beliefs. They're targeting you because you are not a person of this other type. You are a person of this type. And then you have to look at the evidence and put it together if you were participant of or member of a church or a community or or a religious community, or if you have certain political beliefs that makes you different, and because of that you were targeted. You know, a gang member will not target a rich man that have five bodyguards, and if somebody comes here, they will say, "Hey, kill this person because they're threatening me." That is not you. You are you're a simple, common human being that believes in goodness. So the argument can be there. It's just a way of how to present it to the court in your particular circumstances. So don't be discouraged that, all right, you're being a victim of a gang and it's generalized crime in your country, and I cannot seek asylum. There is a way, there's doors, but you have to present it correctly. That's what I want to emphasize in people, because, and also tell your attorney to do his homework. You know, hey, even though I was a victim of, again, and there's general crime in my city, I was targeted because of this, because of one of those five grounds. And you may belong to one specific group, like um, you may be part of ethnic group that you don't even think is protected. You, you may be um, have some ethnicity in your blood that you're different. So you need to be very specific with your counsel about everything about you, who you are, why were you targeted, where were you living, what were you doing, what are your beliefs, What are your political and religious beliefs? Because that is very important and can make a big difference in seeking asylum. So the nexus, this is the other part. The nexus is so important. Many asylum seekers miss this part. Why are you um, the, the, the those five grounds have to be at least one of them a central reason, the motive that you were persecuted has to be based on that. Okay, it was not based on because you have money and there's crime, and well, you don't have a lot of money, but you have more money than other people. Uh, that is not a ground, but because you are a decent person, you you have certain and hold certain beliefs that are coming from your religious beliefs and your political beliefs, then that's why you were targeting. So you have to make that nexus. You have to make that that nexus, and this can be, you know, implied motives. The motives are not um, are explicit sometimes, but they're implicit. In court as well as in the interview with the asylum officer, they're going to harm you with this. They're going to ask you what did they say when they when they mistreated you. When did they say it? When they're doing this? Why were they doing this to you? That nexus, that part of that why has to be related to those five grounds. That is very important to understand. But hey, it could be mixed motives. It can be for different reasons, but one of them has to be at least related to that. And circumstantial evidence is enough to prove that. There doesn't have to be specific evidence, but it can be circumstantial that everything that's surrounded about the level of persecution that you obtain can be implied and can be um, evidence through their behavior. All right, so um, let me see what else I have here.
So
With the
we've got 2 minutes left before we wrap.
Okay,
Thank you so very much, Attorney Eric. Attorney Garro. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we go, I wanted to thank all of our reviewers, obviously, for joining in and tuning in. I had one question that we wanted to make sure we asked you. For a platform that seeks to aid the immigration journey of every documented and undocumented immigrant by connecting them with seasoned attorneys like yourself, what do you think of immigrationquestion.com and what we do for the immigrant community?
I think you're doing a great, fabulous social work, and I applaud you for doing that, and encourage to continue doing it. And I'm here if anybody needs some help. I sometimes when people are in really big need, I don't charge, but I charge very little, whatever, and in payments if you need my help. But don't be discouraged, and please, everybody, understand this. It takes time. Everything in immigration takes time, and things can change. So don't be afraid to just start a process because things may change in the future. So um, it's borrowed time sometimes, but do it ethically, do it correctly, and do it and do it for the right reasons. That's what I tell the people. But you guys are doing a fantastic job, and thank you for having me. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you join us again soon. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. We'll see you next time. Again, if you have any questions, please go to immigrationquestion.com where you can ask your question in any language and get it answered by an immigration attorney today. Thank you. We'll see you next
Thank
time.
you.